wherever needed. Let's just get a confirmation. Jason, can you hear us okay?
It's having some of the same audio issues from last time. I also don't know if my video is visible to you guys.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We can hear you loud and clear. Are you not hearing us very well?
I can hear you, but remember last time everybody was talking about the background noise? It sounds kind of like that. Like I can hear you now. I just don't know if people shuffle papers and stuff, if it's going to be the same.
Yeah, we've got a fan we're gonna shut off and see if that helps.
Okay.
If we all fall asleep.
Right.
There you go. A little less white noise in my ears now.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, problem solved. Okay, well, we will get started with our policy board meeting here on April 19th, 2023. We'll probably meet over here at 12 o'clock. And we'll do introductions. We'll start at the room, then we'll go online for our folks. Let's start with Mr. Cleaver.
Jerry Cleaver, City of Fairbanks.
Mayor Cruz is not here.
Corey Giuliano, Fast Planning.
Olivia Lunsford, Fast Planning.
Bryce Ward, Fairbanks North Star Borough.
Jackson Fox, Fast Planning.
Joe Kemp, DOT. Mike Welch, Mayor, City of Norfolk.
Fred Runnerman, Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly.
And online.
Jason Olds, DEC Air Quality.
All right. And we still don't see Mayor Cruz online, sorry. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll start off with our agenda for today, April 19th. Do we have a motion to approve our agenda?
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the agenda for April 19th as presented.
So moved by Mayor Welch,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Rodeman. Do we have any discussion on our agenda? I'm not seeing any. Did we decide, I'm trying to remember, did we consent? Because we got folks online who can call
I
roll.
think it's okay for the agenda to minutes, just not the action items.
All right, so we'll do that. Is there any objection to approval of the agenda by consent? I'm not hearing any objections, so we'll say that the agenda has been approved by consent. Move to our minutes for March 15th. Do we have a motion on our minutes?
Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the minutes as recorded for our March 15th meeting.
So moved by Mayor Welch.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rodeman. Do we have any discussion on our minutes for March 15th? I'm not seeing any discussion. Is there any objection to approval of our minutes by consent? I'm not seeing any objections, so we'll move, our minutes have been approved by consent. That brings us to our committee work group reports. Mr. Cox, you can start us off.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Ward. Let me, if you go to page 13, start the staff report there. Just a few items on the project and planning meetings. First one of which at the top, Tetland to Fort Knox, Transportation Advisory Committee meeting number 4. I did attend that. Kenny Engineering provided a very good presentation on the data that they've collected to date on the crash statistics throughout the corridor, as well as pavement condition throughout the corridor and stopping distance of the trucks that are planned to be used for the overhaul analysis. Following that meeting, I did send a list of questions to the consultant team to provide some more data points for the full committee at our next meeting, which will occur in May. So that is moving forward. As I understand, they're trying to release a document for the public to review towards the end of summer, as well as hold a public hearing on some of the recommendations that come out of the plan. Right now, they're still in kind of data collection mode and answering some of the questions that have been raised by the committee. Next, I've had multiple meetings with a company called Replica, which basically mines cell phone data to look at different aspects of your transportation network. So the data that they can provide to us on a subscription basis produces average annual daily traffic on roadways. They have counts they can distinguish whether or not you're in a vehicle or if you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist. Looking at other communities that they show me data to. Basically, you can have a comprehensive count week by week as far as usage on every road segment within our communities, even back alleyways, local streets. And my thought is I'm working with this company is that this might be a good use of the funding that we've set aside for our household travel survey to collect a more comprehensive data set to update our travel demand model for our next long range planning effort. So there'll be more on that at future meetings this coming summer. Two other things here. We did also meet with borough community planning staff on the proposed bike lane sign and striping pilot project to compare some of the roadways selected in the downtown core for bike lanes underneath the pilot project and compare that against what's shown in the downtown plan for bicycle and pedestrian corridors in the downtown. Bottom line, borough community planning staff want to make sure that the routes selected are consistent with each other. So, and willing to, some of the routes are different from what's in the downtown plan, but potentially may lead to some updates to the downtown plan and selecting different corridors that were selected a few years back. We've also had a couple meetings with Max Transit staff on software as a service providers. Corey has been doing a lot of research for different service providers that are used throughout the lower 48. Has presented to them some preliminary information on costs and different capabilities of the different applications people can utilize on their phones to access transit. It's mobile fare payments, but it's also being able to track the bus live and have an idea of what bus schedules are. So, it's pretty dynamic software, so those conversations are continuing. But also want to make note that the RFP for the transit plan updates is out in the street. So thanks to DOT for getting that out there. And proposals are due back to DOT by May 3rd. And that'll be a joint DOT, fast planning and borough review effort when those proposals come in for those transit plan updates. All right, next page, Olivia. Underneath the organization, we have filed our 990 form with IRS, their tax return that was approved at our last meeting. And then underneath public outreach, Corey and Olivia hosted the booth at the Interior Alaska Home Show and had a lot of great interactions with members of the public there, learning more about fast planning and who we are, what we do, and also providing to them some general comment on projects and even transit. You may or may not have seen, we also published an April Fool's Day newsletter, which came out Saturday morning. So something we haven't done for a number of years, but it was something fun for staff to participate in and try to get some more followers on our Facebook page, whatnot, more followers for real newsletters when they come out later this year. And also I did 2 presentations this past month, one in front of the Chena Riverfront Commission to give them an update on the Chena Riverwalk project. And specifically the right-of-way phase on that, as well as showcase to them the new river safety and wayfinding signs that will be installed on 11 boat launches along the lower Chena River here this coming summer. And Borough Parks and Rec is teaming up with us on those installations and has agreed to install at least half of the signs. And we'll be reaching out to some of those business owners to coordinate the remainder of those sign installations, but we should see those signs being installed beginning in June. And then I also provided an open presentation at the Spring Agency Day, the Associated General Contractors annual meeting on some really some updates and hot topics that we've been all discussing here at Fast Planning. So it was a wide range of topics, not necessarily related to each other, but I did impress upon them the proposed EPA sanctions and what that all potentially means for our federal highway funding for our area, to make everybody aware that might be coming up beginning later this year with a conformity freeze, and then over 2 years from now, potentially withholding federal highway funds. But again, more work needs to be done between the state and the EPA to try to get an approvable plan in front of the EPA, so we can avoid some of these sanctions. And then submittals and reports. Following last month's meeting, I did submit the final Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the Air Quality Conformity Analysis, and the 2023 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Program documents to DOT, which has transmitted them to the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration for approval. And I hope to receive that here soon. And then on the funding side, I am working with the Alaska Energy Authority on a grant application in partnership with them for a US DOT discretionary grant opportunity for charging and fueling infrastructure. My idea was that recently here we've had project nominations for 21 electric vehicle charging stations throughout Fairbanks North Pole area. And I think it would be a strong application to bundle those together and submit to this grant opportunity so that we can supplement our allocation to our area and try to get those funded with outside funds. And then lastly on this page here, the technical committee members have completed their scoring of new project nominations to the congestion mitigation and air quality and carbon reduction program. We've also received all the emission benefit calculations for all those projects. And so on the agenda today, here is an action item. I will share with you all how the scoring came out, as well as the emission benefit calculations, and discuss a funding strategy for moving these projects forward. And then the next page, this was a big training month for us, for all three of our primary staff members here. So you can see the trainings that we participated in. A lot of these are kind of 1-hour webinars, but we did utilize some of our time post training this past month. And then last page for the staff report, page 16, you'll see the action items from the technical committee. This relates to 2 of the 3 action items on your agenda today. So the first one is that they recommended the board approve the funding strategy that I'll present to you later in the meeting. There was an amendment that did not, that had 7 in favor, 7 opposed, and that amendment failed. But as you'll see in the funding strategy, the amendment that was proposed is in spirit. It is that's what we're trying to move forward with for that particular project, which is a roundabout at Sheep Creek Road and West Tanana Drive. There was discussion about how we've just done some intersection improvements out there that might look bad to the public, that we are replacing those with a roundabout, which was the preferred treatment. We didn't invest a lot of money out there, and in DOT's opinion, that was kind of a Band-Aid fix to address some safety issues out there and turning movements. But as you'll see in the funding strategy, we'll be requesting that DOT headquarters use some of their statewide air quality dollars to fund that project, as opposed to utilizing our allocation to our area, to the PM 2.5 area. So in any event, that motion did fail, but you'll see in the funding strategy, the kind of the spirit of the motion is still in my strategy to request that outside funds be used for that. The next action item was they did recommend the policy board accept the budget amendment that's on today's agenda for our office budget. And then your last action item here on today's agenda is the Fifth Avenue reconstruction project increase. I was made aware of this construction increase on Friday last week. So this is not something the technical committee has reviewed or provided any recommendation to you. But as I understand, there's some urgency to issue the intent to award this week, so there's no delays for construction to move forward. So it is on your agenda here today. I just have an email from DOT covering the amount that they need to award the project. But I also, the last couple of days, have been working on some options on changing our funding plan to accommodate that funding. And I will have 3 options to present to you all this afternoon for your consideration on that. And that concludes my staff report.
Do you have any questions from Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any. We will next move to our public comment periods for non-action items. Do we have any members of the public that wish to give testimony today? Do we have anyone online? No. Okay, I am not seeing anyone that wishes to provide comment under public comment period non-action items, so that public comment period is closed. That brings us to old business, item 7A, or CMAQ and carbon reduction program recommendations. Mr. Fox, this is an action item. Mr. Fox can give us an introduction. We'll go to public comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Warden. I will apologize in advance. This is going to be a bit of a lengthy introduction here. And it's a small packet, but this is where I have the most information to share with you all. So beginning on page 17, this is the outcome of the technical committee member scoring and the emission benefit calculations for the 28 projects that were recently nominated to us earlier this year for our congestion mitigation and air quality and carbon reduction program funding. In total, we have about $3 million per year to devote to these projects. We do have some old projects from our last round a couple of years ago that are still in design and heading towards construction. So we don't have that full $3 million available every year from this year forward. We do have $3 million available this year. In the next couple of years, it's $1 million each, and then we're getting back up to that $3 million per year effort. But in total, it was about $23 million in projects that were nominated to us. Doing the simple math, it'd take about 7 years to fund all of these. But this initial spreadsheet here, these 4 pages, which begin on page 17, has all of the projects ranked in priority order based on the objective process of the technical committee member scores and the emission benefit analysis. And as you can see on those right-hand columns there, you'll see that the technical committee member scores and rankings do very nicely follow, or I should say are consistent with the emission benefit calculations. So the highest scoring projects in here also have the highest emission benefits. So I was happy to see that those two come out in sync. I am going to go through each of these projects kind of one by one on another table, not this one here. But just to mention on these 4 pages, some of the projects that sail to the top, 2 of which were for Max Transit, providing them funding for a subscription service for software as a service, and then followed by subsidized ticketing for UAF students and staff, seniors, and primary age school students up to the age of 19. And then following the subsidized ticketing, we have the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center enhancements, DOT's stage 2 of the Northern Region Signal Interconnect, the University Avenue rail crossing automated train switch. And on the next page, downtown parking garage enhancements, local electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan, a couple of roundabouts, one at West Valley High School, and then also another one at Sheep Creek Road and West Tanana Drive, which I mentioned earlier. And then in there and on the next page, you'll see some additional motor vehicle plugins for public parking lots, as well as the electric vehicle charging stations throughout the Fairbanks North Pole area. Getting down towards kind of the bottom of the list, there was requests, 2 from the city and then 1 from Max Transit for sidewalk snow removal equipment. And despite the fact that those don't quite score as high as other projects, they are good projects to fund with money that we haven't spent from last year. So you'll see in my funding strategy that I kind of accelerate those to get those underway, since it's simply a procurement to purchase equipment, which is a lot simpler than designing and constructing a project. And then on the last page, page 20, you'll see kind of the bottom of the list there. There are a handful of projects that there really was no emission benefit that could be calculated from them. Or it has a very low emission benefit. One is the Tanana Lakes rec area, dust mitigation. It's basically a gravel pavement project with some shoulder widening. There's really no wintertime benefit for air quality for that project, despite the fact there is a summertime benefit. And then on Gaffney Road, the sidewalk replacement, there's really no emission benefit because we would be replacing the sidewalk that currently exists and bringing it into ADA compliance. And so it's difficult to try to project how many more users you might get on that. And the trigger for emission benefit is that someone's utilizing that sidewalk or choosing to not drive the vehicle and utilize that sidewalk. So in any event, there's a few projects here that really didn't have much of an emission benefit, even though they are, those are all eligible for this funding. And then the very bottom project number 28, this is the only project under 28 that we determined not to be eligible, and that was for the purchase of new tires and rims for a piece of the maintenance equipment at the City of North Pole. So there was really only one that was taken out of the running strictly based on eligibility. Okay. So let's go to page 21. As I mentioned, we did do a round of project, a call for project nominations approximately 3 years ago. And this is the funding plan that was developed, and I grayed out the projects that have been completed. So, and then left the projects in white on this spreadsheet are projects that are still in the queue. So you can see that we completed the Fairbanks Adaptive Signal Control Project. We have transferred all the funding for the compressed natural gas fueling station at the Burroughs New Maintenance Facility. We've also funded the highway dynamic messaging signs, and as well as the motor vehicle plug-in project, which I understand will be under construction here this summer, but all the funding's been obligated for that. Projects that have not yet gone to construction or received funding is the Burroughs compressed natural gas buses. As we understand, the borough has quite a few $1 million right now to purchase some of these buses. And then as they utilize that money and they need more, then we can provide additional funding for additional compressed natural gas buses. Right now, in the plan, we're projecting around 2027, but they would actually need that because I believe they're purchasing 1 to 2 per year. So the whole fleet's not the same age and they don't all age out at the same time. So that's still out in the future year. But on the bottom of the sheet, you'll see that Crow Creek elementary pavement upgrades and University Avenue South Bike and Ped Path. Those projects are both in design. And from my discussions with the design teams, Crow Creek will be ready for construction next summer, and University Avenue will be ready in 2025. And then on the next page, this funding plan, the Pega Road Bike and Ped path, which would be on the east side of Pega Road between the river and Airport Way. We've actually pushed the funding for that out to match up with the current schedule for the Pioneer Park North parking lot and boat launch upgrades, so that goes to construction the same year as that larger project and can be bid together. So we have delayed the design start on that and matched up the construction year with that other larger project. The Tanana Lakes Rec area, South Latham Street Extension and parking area, all that funding has been transferred to Western Federal Lands. That will go under construction this summer. And then we've not yet provided any funding for the gravel pavement bundle of projects or the Dawson Road improvements at the bottom, which is also a gravel pavement project. But we have purchased the equipment for DOT for our articulated tractor for sidewalk snow removal, as well as the bidirectional 2-way tow plow. So those were purchased kind of early on, and so they're out of the funding plan. So that's kind of where we stand with the funding allocated to the June 2.5 area as far as projects that have been completed and projects that still require some funding. To show you this in a little bit different format, on the next page, page 23, this is a 1-page summary of that 2-page funding plan. So what it shows you is that this current year in 2023, we still have 1.2 million available to program for new projects that have been nominated to us. But then the next 2 years, 24 and 25, we do have 2 projects going in construction, Crow Creek and University Avenue. So those dollars will generally be zeroed out. But then in 26, we'll have 1.5 million. And then in 27, we may have the full 2 million available. That is all kind of dependent on where the borough is at with purchasing compressed natural gas buses. So that's a tentative year to give them some additional funding. They may or may not have the need at that time. And then on the next page, you'll see in contrast, our new funding category, our carbon reduction program funds. We began receiving these last year in 2022. It's about 1 million per year. And we didn't spend any of last year's funding on any projects because we wanted to go through this project nomination process. Each of these years that funding is provided to us, we have a 3-year window in which to obligate those funds. So even the $22, we don't need to obligate those until I think 2025. But what I'm proposing is that we combine the $22 and $23. So available this year will be 1.8 million for new project starts and purchase of equipment. And then each year after that, 1 million available again for new project starts. So when you look at these 2 pages together, for 2023, we have about $3 million available. The next 2 years, $1 million each. And then in that 4th year, we could have up to 3 million available again in the 4th year. So this just shows you the available funding. So now the meat of today's action item, this begins on page 25. This is what I'm calling my funding strategy. I am asking for the policy board to pass a motion on this today. This is just a strategy so that I have my marching orders of direction to put together an official funding plan to bring back to you in June. I am still waiting on about a half dozen scope schedules and estimates from DOT on these projects so that we have good numbers for what they estimate the design costs, utilities, right of way, and construction phase costs will be for these projects nominated. We kind of have a rough estimated cost. Most of these estimated costs came from the applicants themselves. But again, we want DOT to look at those and compare those against current bid prices, but also with their knowledge of how much funding it takes to design some of these improvements and get them moving. We want to reality check the numbers before I put together an official funding plan. But I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, but I'm going to go through each project. Because as part of this funding strategy, I have combined some similar projects. So the list is going from 28 projects down to just 23. It's the same dollar amount, but I have combined projects. One example would be combining the design and construction of the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center enhancements with the downtown parking garage enhancements. Because I think that would be a good project for a consulting firm with architects and engineers to design both of those hand in hand for two facilities in downtown that are relatively close to each other and relatively similar in scope, and then put those improvements out to bid together for one contractor to bid on both projects for that economy of scale. So, so that's just an example. But from the top, the Max Transit software as a service. For the funding strategy, I'm proposing to provide $100,000 per year over a period of 5 years to Max Transit to cover their subscription cost. And we believe, based on Corey's research, that that's a relatively good number for what it will cost to provide that. For the Max Transit subsidized ticketing, their fare revenues in a normal year are just in excess of $200,000 per year for all the user groups that you see here. So we're proposing $200,000 per year over a period of 5 years. And then the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center, as I mentioned before, the proposal is to combine the design effort and the construction bidding with the downtown parking garage enhancements, since they're similar projects. But I still need a scope schedule and estimate from DOT for that work to populate the funding plan. The DOT Northern Region Signal Interconnect. This is a project that we will be, I plan to request DOT headquarters use some of their statewide congestion mitigation or quality dollars for the amount of this funding source that comes to the state of Alaska. 25% of it is devoted to the PM 2.5 area, but there is still 75% of those funds that are available for statewide use. And we have done this on particular projects in the past. And in talking to Judy Chapman, who's the deputy director now of program development, she is in support of trying to utilize some of their statewide dollars to fund this project as opposed to using our local allocation. So that would be the strategy. It's also a $4 million project, which would take over 2 years worth of our funding to get that one. So it's a pretty big project for this program. And again, DOT seems to be open to this request, but my plan is to make the official request in our funding plan. For the University Avenue Rail Crossing automated train switch, we do have a pretty good estimate from the railroad on this, but I wanted DOT to check the numbers. Our hope is that we can take this funding and transfer it to the Federal Transit Administration or Federal Railroad Administration, such that the railroad would be a direct recipient of those federal funds, and they can manage the design and construction process without any DOT involvement. So that's what we're trying to do. So it would just be a $650,000 fund transfer to a different federal agency to get to the railroad the money to do this work and take it off DOT's plate. So and I have started those conversations with the railroad to see what possibilities exist with that arrangement. It would be similar to the money we provided for the Lathrop Street extension to the borough, where we simply transferred money to Western Federal Lands, and then they were able to receive it through a different federal agency, and it reduces the burden off the DOT on the design and construction side. All right, next page, 26. At the top, downtown parking garage enhancements. Again, I want to combine that one with Morris Thompson Cultural Visitor Center enhancements for the design and construction. Below that is a local electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan for our area. This plan would supplement the state's infrastructure plan, but be, obviously very focused on our urban area and putting together a good network of charging stations through our community as we're seeing more and more EVs pop up on our roadways. Below that is the West Valley High School roundabout. This is another one where we need a stroke schedule estimate from DOT. We do think that number is pretty solid, but my plan is to not award funding to this project until an access and circulation study is done at the West Valley and Hutchinson High School campuses. So that study will either confirm that a roundabout is the best treatment out there, or may come up with other circulation improvements for those two campuses, which are right next to each other. What I would like to do is fund the study first, and then based on the outcome of the study, then we will fund some of those improvements, which may or may not be a roundabout. We think it will be, but I think the study will help confirm that. And separately, you'll see later on the list, DOT did nominate to us a package of access and circulation studies for our area high school. So this would be the first location where we award some planning funds to do that study. Number 9, electric vehicle charging stations. I've bundled together all of the 21 locations where electric vehicle charging stations were requested. So these would be on UAF campus, at 2 libraries, at the visitor center, at the downtown parking garage, also North Pole City Hall, Pioneer Park, and the Borough Admin Center. So this is something that, that again, for a design and construction effort, will be a good project to bundle together underneath one effort. And as I mentioned during my staff report, this bundle here will be something that this year, by the end of May, there's a grant application due to the US DOT for this type of project. So the strategy would be to, again, bundle these projects together and then apply for the US DOT discretionary grant. And if we are not successful in securing that, then we'll use our allocation for our area. The bottom one there, the Sheep Creek Road and West Town Drive roundabout, similar to the stage 2 of the signal interconnect, and discussion with the technical committee on how this gets paid for. My plan is to request DOT headquarters use some of that statewide congestion mitigation air quality dollars to fund this project. Since again, it's also a $4+ million project, which will be over 2 years of our allocation. So if we're successful in getting DOT to fund this with their statewide allocation, this one and the signal interconnect, it'll drop the amount of projects that were nominated to us from 23 million down to just 15 million. It'll take $8 million off the table, which would be a huge help to get some of these other local projects to construction sooner than later. Okay, next page. Page 27, the Borough Hybrid Vehicle Fleet Pilot Program. The Borough requested that we purchase 4 hybrid sport utility vehicles for staff use. And I'll mention this too on the sidewalk snow removal equipment. Provided these are relatively simple, I would like to authorize the money this year for these vehicles to be procured and put on order. As you saw in some of the previous spreadsheets, we've got $2022 that we have not yet spent. And this is a quick way to spend some of the old money before it has potential to expire. Below that's the high school access circulation plans, which I mentioned. The idea would be to first initiate a study at West Valley and Hutchinson High School campuses, and then consider other campuses after that, which would be the North Pole High School and Lathrop High School. Below that, the Chino Lake Rec area, bike and pedestrian access via Plaque Road. This is not a very large dollar amount project, but we do need a scope schedule investment from DOT. And I think it's very appropriate to get it into design now with the understanding that the construction phase wouldn't hit us until about 2025, a couple of years later. But let's just go ahead and get that one in design. Then we'll authorize construction funding in a couple of years. Wayfinding signs out of the airport. This is something that the Fairbanks International Airport is supportive of, both for the installations, but agreeing to the maintenance of those signs out there. So DOT is working on a scope schedule and estimate for wayfinding signs along the new bike head path that connects directly to the terminal, connects it with the area hotels to the north. And then below that, I have two bundles of motor vehicle plugins. The first bundle of motor vehicle plugins would be at North Pole City Hall and at Pioneer Park. At 3 of the 4 parking lots at Pioneer Park, or 3 of the 4 locations requested at Pioneer Park. But as you can see below that, I've separated out the motor vehicle plugins for the future north parking lot, because I think it would be a good strategy for those plugins at a parking lot that doesn't exist yet, that $200,000 simply be transferred to that larger parent project, so that simply gets included in the design effort for that. And then the bottom, sidewalk snow removal equipment, I combined all 3 nominations. The city was very specific on what type of equipment they would like to purchase. And Max Transit was not specific, so we still need to confirm with them the make and model that they desire for their new full-time maintenance person that's helping clear bus shelters on roadways throughout town. But again, the idea here would be is to use some of those old 2022 dollars we haven't spent yet and get this equipment procured in the hopes that, by early winter or midwinter, this equipment is delivered to both the city of Fairbanks and Max Transit for their use coming up. On the next page, you'll see 2 compressed natural gas fueling projects that the University of Alaska Fairbanks nominated. One is for a fueling station, and the other one is for replacement of the 5 vehicle fleet of shuttle buses. These 2 projects, for one reason or another, didn't score as high as some of the other projects. So what we're looking at is delaying the design start out till 2024 for this, with the expectation that the fueling infrastructure might be built in 2026. And then in 2026, once we know that the ground's going to be broken on a new fueling station, then we can begin authorizing money for the shuttle bus fleet replacement. We don't want to buy buses until they have a fueling station in place. So that's the strategy. And then the next three projects here, I don't have a recommended funding source or funding start. Basically, my idea would be is that these next 3 projects we would push into out years, so probably beyond 2026, since again, they don't provide any real calculated emission benefit during the winter time. So 20, 21, and 22, they're all eligible for this funding, but again, don't have any emission benefit. So I didn't want to eliminate them, but I do think that these projects are better positioned to be renominated to fast planning underneath different programs. So like the Gaffney Road sidewalk replacement, for example, would be a good nomination to our fast improvement program for future year to go to construction in 24, 25. So it's not to say that fast planning is not interested in funding these. It's just our air quality dollars might be better used on other projects, and these projects can be renominated to other programs as we do call for nominations. But the bottom one, this is the bottom ranking project on this funding strategy here, but something that we can move on really quickly. And this is a replacement of the candy cane bulbs on the streetlights in North Pole, converting them to LEDs. As you should all be aware, there is a project under contract right now, the North Pole Streetlight Standardization Phase 1, which is in the city core. And I've been working with the DOT project manager on that to come up with a price for a change order for that contractor to just go ahead and do that this summer. And this is a really low cost project, as you can see there. And provided there's already a contractor under contract to do similar work in the area, I think this would be a great use of some of our old 2022 funds to just go ahead and get this done for North Pole. Even though it's on the bottom of the list, I'm still proposing that we, in the funding plan, we just get this going right away. So thank you for giving me the time for that lengthy introduction. After the public comment period, I am looking for a motion on approval of the funding strategy and any amendments that you'd like to suggest.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any. We'll go to public comment. Do we have anyone in the room that wishes to give comment today? Anyone online? I'm not seeing anyone online or in the room, so public comment period is closed. Do we have a motion on item 7A?
Mr. Chair,
Very well.
I motion that we authorize executive director's funding strategy as presented to us for the CMAC funds.
So moved by Mayor Welch,
Second?
second by Mr. Rodeman. Discussion. Mayor Welch, you'd like to start us off?
I'm happy to see there's a lot of thought put into this, and I believe that it's a good way forward to make the most of the monies that we're going to get. I'm happy to see that in a parochial sense, the city of North Pole has also been indicated several times through this project. So I applaud Mr. Jackson Fox for doing his due diligence here.
Thank you, Mayor Welch. Mr. Cleaver?
Thank you, Mayor. At some meetings in the past, I had registered my concern of the weighting of the process that we go through on this, but I did not prevail in that discussion, so this is what we have here. One of the problems I had is that the weighting is so heavy on winter projects, and I disagree with that somewhat. But be that as it may, everything on this list is, with the exception of two items, enhances infrastructure or adds something that has longevity to its purpose. The one things I have concern with is number 2. And I mentioned this the other day when we had our pre-meeting on subsidizing tickets for bus riders, which is something that has longevity for 5 years and then it's done. I know during COVID, I think all bus rides are free. But even now, what is a token cost? $1? You know?
It depends, but about 50, I think.
Yeah, so I think if you want to do a round trip, it's like $3.
So the borough has heavily subsidizes the buses now. I think that the revenues, when they are charging a revenue, not like during COVID, probably do not exceed 25% of the costs. I don't know if I'm close or not. So they are already heavily subsidized. This would make it essentially free for certain classes of riders. This is the only project I see that doesn't really have longevity to it. It's just a subsidy. And I have a problem with that. I don't think we should be subsidizing riders of certain classes as indicated here. In fact, as given in the description, it says students, staff, seniors, primary school students, up page 19. And then on page 25 of the notes, it says this project absorbs the project nomination for the Green Line fixed route and paratransit waivers in North Pole. That's project number 6 down there. Max Transit staff prefer system-wide subsidies rather than free ticketing for individuals and fixed routes. So I don't know if that's in conflict with what's happening here or not. It sounds like it. But I don't think it should be on here. All these projects should have some kind of infrastructure improvement or longevity to it. But that just concerns me. So I'm going to throw that out for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. Further discussion? Question, maybe Mr. Fox on this. So we're approving a recommendation for a funding strategy. This just essentially gives priority to you or direction to you from the board on how to proceed with an actual fiscal plan that comes back to the board.
Correct. Olivia, if you go to the green spreadsheet, you see page 21. So in June, what I'm going to do is bring, based on what I've outlined here for my strategy, in June, I'm going to bring back to you all for final approval of official funding plan, which is based, this is like our air quality tip. So I'm going to bring this back to you in June with all the numbers populated. But if I get your buy-off on the strategy as I presented, then I know, when to start projects and when to get them into construction and I know this project scored number 20 and it wasn't very high, but I want to use last year's dollars for it. So you'll see it in this funding plan, everything I described there. So today is just a strategy. A funding plan will come up in June to this body for final approval and any amendments at this time. So this is not the last bite at the apple today on this.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodeman?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Mr. Claver's thoughts. I definitely have a hang up on, well, really, of any subsidies I think people should really be paying for. And, but certainly we're targeting a specific group of people here. And I just don't think that's the right thing to do. I think there's a better use of that $1 million than this particular program.
Further discussion, debate?
Just as sort of contrary to that, I'd point out, I don't see like a column, but I'm looking back on page 17, the packet, for, emission reduction per dollar, but just kind of eyeballing, aside from, our number one ranked one, this is a very effective use of funds for actual reductions.
Thank you, Mr. Olds, for pointing that out. And we've got it up on screen if folks are looking at that. Further discussion, debate? Directions, thoughts?
Well, just to follow up on that, I don't intend to amend that or try to amend it out of here. I will wait till June, but I do intend to do it at that time. And I was just hoping maybe if there was thought along this line that we could simplify Mr. Fox's projects here by one or two projects. But before I leave that, Mayor, maybe on number 6 there, I'm a little confused on the paratransit bus waivers, but what is that exactly?
Paratransit are the next Vantrans. So the short Vantran services that we provide for folks that need additional service. Usually it's for folks that have some sort of disability and are not able to use the current transit system. We operate within a 1 mile or half mile buffer of all of the transit routes for priority. So folks, it's an on-call service. Typically we can bring someone to a medical appointment or
It's for Vantran.
Vantran, correct?
Okay. I'll leave it there, Jackson.
Further discussion, debate? I did want to maybe add a few comments here. Item 12 is the circulation plans. It sounds like your intention, Jackson, is to do this first before any of the high school related plans. Is that kind of what your intention is?
Yeah, I want to, in the funding plan, you'll see that I'm going to propose to authorize, say, half that amount, maybe $150,000 to do an access and circulation study at that high school campus before we consider authorizing $3 million to build a roundabout there, just to confirm that that's the appropriate treatment for the campus.
Okay, but the circulation plan as it's scoped includes North Pole, Lathrop.
Correct.
And so is the intention to do a comprehensive or just to do a piece off, just the one for West?
So this would be like a program in the first location where we've authorized funding, that's West Valley and Hutchinson, but you'll see in the funding plan that the remainder of the money will go to Lathrop and North Pole high schools. So you'll see across a couple, like probably 2 years, you'll see 2 different funding hits for different efforts.
Okay. I guess my only comment was I like the idea of doing the plan first before we start to fund the projects. We make sure we're actually funding the right project.
That was my intent.
Yeah.
That's how I tried to lay it out.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, discussion, debate? All right, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Fox, if you would call the roll, the motion is to approve the funding strategy.
All right, Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Kemp,
Yes.
Mayor Ward,
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver,
Yes,
Mr. Urban,
Yes.
Mr. Olds.
Yes.
All right, we've got approval on that. Thank you, everybody. We'll move to our next item of business, which is 8A, new business. This is a budget amendment for the 23 office budget. Mr. Fox, if you would give us an intro.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Ward. Olivia, if you go to page 29. Before you're here today, I have a budget amendment request for a total of $11,500 to increase our office budget on two different budget categories. The first one is information technologies. We would like to upgrade Olivia's GIS license from a standard license up to an advanced user license. The cost of that is approximately $6,100 per year to that advanced user license, and I'll give her a couple minutes of airtime to explain the differences between the two licenses and why we'd like that upgrade. But then in addition to that, I'd like to increase our meetings budget by $5,000 as we have expended that budget at the 6-month mark here at Fast Planning with a largely due to a trip where all 3 staff members went down to Anchorage for DOT's planning data summit, and then spent an additional day there to visit with AMAT staff and discuss all things NPOs. So we're asking for those increases across those two categories, as you can see to the left of that. If you look at our budget versus actuals for the year, so this is a 6-month look from October through the end of March. For the total budget, we're only expended 40%. So I don't have any concerns about exceeding the existing budget, but I just have some concerns about a couple budget categories that one that is already overextended, and then one that we expect to be overextended if we purchase that advanced user's license. In total, it's about a 1.5% budget increase. Behind this is the quote from Esri for what that advanced user license costs. And before I turn it over to Olivia, the last thing I wanted to share with you is on page 32. Besides a look at our budget, I also wanted to share with you a 6-month look of our expenditures versus revenue. So on the left-hand column, month by month, you'll see what our actual expenditure has been between direct and indirect costs, and then what revenue that we have received from DOT through our consolidated planning grant. So we are clearing, or we are getting reimbursed for in full all of our actual expenditure plus a little extra. So we're about $30,000 ahead at the 6-month mark in the year. So even with these additional expenditures and the budget amendment, we have more than enough to cover it in excess revenue from our DOT billings. But Olivia, if you wouldn't mind a minute or two about the user license.
Sure. So as many of you know, I did graduate from UCLA last spring in their GIS certification program. So through that, I actually did have access to the advanced level licensing for about 1.5 years, which was really, really nice, and something that proved to be pretty helpful with some particular fast planning related GIS exercises. But this advanced license upgrade, along with the extension bundle, will allow us to do a few things that I'm not capable of doing with the basic license right now. That's the bare minimum license that you can get. Number one being that we can deploy Esri solutions, which are tools and workflows that they build, and then I can download them from a server and then put them into my ArcMap and then apply all of our data. So it's really nice. I don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you do need an advanced license to do quite a bit of that with our solutions. We also would be provided a higher level of customer service from Esri in terms of, I don't know how to do this, please help. And then also, this is just my big hairy goal, and I would really like to accomplish that. They're a lot more available to people when you get that advanced licensing. The other things that I wanted to mention as well is that the extensions will allow me to do a couple of things. Number one, most important right now, is doing the analyses for our boundary extension or change, thanks to the census data that we've got. And it will allow me to build out a 3D model of Fairbanks, which is a goal for fast planning. We would really like to have some 3D renderings for our future projects. And last but not least, because of our utilization of the basic license and what we've been able to accomplish by jumping out of Esri products and into QGIS and doing some stuff with a free and then jumping back in or finding different workflows, I've been able to produce a lot of materials that Esri sees to be warranted and deserving of comp UC passes or user conference passes. So for me, my pass this year is complimentary, over $2,000 worth. And then Jackson was invited to the executive summit, which about 20,000 people attend this conference every year and only 300 get to go to the executive summit. So it's a really big deal and would be very appreciative of having the advanced user license. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, questions for staff?
So it's question, Chair, sir.
Yes,
Um,
Mr. Kemp.
So it's an increase to your budget of 11.5 total, or do you, or is it just a line item change from? Like
So it's
personal
a-
services?
It's an increase to those two budget categories, which would increase the budget overall by 1.5%.
Okay.
So it's not a budget transfer between categories, it's a budget addition.
All right, other questions before we go to public comment? Not seeing any. Do we have anyone in the room who wishes to give public comment? Anyone online? Not seeing anyone. Public comment period is closed. Do we have a motion on item 8A, our budget amendments?
Move to approve.
Moved by Mr. Cleaver,
Second.
seconded by Mayor Welch. Discussion. Mr. Cleaver?
Yeah, the follow-up on the discussion we had at pre-meeting. When we created the bylaws for fast planning, I don't remember everything that had to do with the budget. That was a few years back, but this is something that really should not even, I think, come before us, with the exception of personnel, which any changes there should always come before the body. When you're 40% expended for the 6 months, and money is available to do it. I think that staff should have the authority amongst the office administration all the way down to supplies there to make changes within those budgets to make things work and not have to come here to do that. The only exceptions, like I say, would be personnel or if there was a significant savings and they were envisioning hiring somebody, then yeah, that should come back to us. But I would, I guess, instruct maybe Jackson to take a look at the bylaws again and see exactly what it says. And if it's non-committal on this or ambiguous on it, I think possibly we should change the bylaws so that the staff can make those changes internally as long as that budget is not exceeded for the year. And that little stuff like this doesn't have to come back to us. And I think we can do that with just a vote of the policy board, if my memory is right. So I would request that at the next meeting, maybe.
I can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. Any further discussion, debate? All right, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Fox, if you would call the roll on the budget amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Cleaver,
Yes.
Mayor Ward,
Yes.
Mr. Kemp,
Yes.
Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Roderman,
Yes.
and Mr. Olds.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone. That's been approved. That brings us to 8B, Fifth Avenue Reconstruction Project Increase. It is an action item. Mr. Fox, if you could give us an intro.
Yeah, we have a few folks in the room here from both DOT and the city of Fairbanks to explain the increase request, which is found on page 33 in your packet. DOT is looking for an additional $793,000 in federal funds to award the contract to the low bidder this week. It's actually an attempt to award. So I think you're going to hear here soon some of the reasons for this increase and the need to get this approved this week. Again, this is not something that went to the technical committee since I was made aware of it on Friday last week. But I do have, once they provide an introduction and have opportunity for you all to ask questions of them, I have put together 3 potential options for funding this increase through changes to our transportation improvement program document. So we will pull those up on the screen a little bit later. after we kind of hear more about the increase, so that motions could be made on hopefully one of the options or different options that's not presented. So I'd like to move over to Bob first. Okay.
Should I go from there?
Yeah, I think that works.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, policy board. I'm here, Bob Brissett, city engineer with Yvette Hall, the DOT design manager, and Dave Harvey, the DOT construction manager. We're supposed to address the Fifth Avenue increase. So really what it stems from is the difference between the engineer's estimate and the low bid. Right? I just want to give you some explanation on why I see it. They can add to it, but you know, why was there a discrepancy? You know, first thing really got to think about the engineer's estimate was done about August 2022, I think was when it was last updated, 8 months ago. So 8 months time is a fair amount of time for things to change. And what we have, I actually called the two contractors, asked them why. The fuel parts are twice as much, material costs, shipping uncertainties. And I wasn't aware laborers and operators increased about $6 to $10 an hour. I certainly didn't know anything about this when we put the estimate together 8 months ago. And these are all things inflation. You know, who can see the future really? And you know, the contract does have provisions, you know, let's say if asphalt goes up 6.5%, contractor will get paid for that. If it goes over 7.5%, then they get paid for it. So there's risk here that nobody knows what's going to happen during this thing for sure. Time's the essence of the contract. You know, we're gonna do everything we can, but we really haven't even given intent to award, never mind award, never mind pre-construction conference, never mind notice to proceed. You know, we're probably looking at a month before the contractor can actually start work. And we're gonna be doing a reconstruction from Barnett to Noble. That's a lot of work to do in a short period of time. There are provisions in the contract for an extension. The engineer may extend the contract, but they don't know if really it's going to happen. And if they do, some bid items like the luminaires, they may be standing those in November. That's going to definitely increase your cost. So they bid it higher, you know, basically. And the last thing I wanted to say is it's 24% increase. That seems like a fair amount, but Aurora, noise flew over there, that came in at 44% higher. I don't really think 24% higher is an anomaly for our bidding environment now. I mean, so you know, whether the choices Jackson laid out, different funding choices, you know, one thing would be not to do it. It's never going to be any cheaper. So, and that's, you know, when we do the estimate, time to do the project, and really is this out of line with everything else we're seeing that's coming in? I really don't think so. That's what I have. Any questions for Dave and myself? I'll try to answer them.
Do we have any questions from policy board members? Oh, we did have a question for you.
Sure.
How many bidders did you have? How many bidders?
3. And the other thing is, you know, it was a low bid job and they're all very close. They're all very close to one another. So really, you know, that's really what this job is costing at this time. I mean, when all 3 contractors come in very close, you know, that's a pretty good price. It's not going to get much lower.
All right, other questions?
So I'll present the funding plan options
Okay.
for you all to consider in a motion later on. So I'll hand this out, but Olivia, in the meetings packet directory, the very bottom one, it should say Fifth Avenue funding plan options. Yep, there it is. Here, I'll pass this out as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
So since Friday afternoon, I've been spent a few hours staring at our funding plan underneath our transportation improvement program. And, really, again, the federal portion is 793,000, there's, match included. But really, we have a lot of projects that are underway and headed to construction that like we don't want to disrupt, like Yankovich Miller Hill, Roll Road reconstruction. So I really only have three options to present in front of you that I think, any one of these I think would work. I do think some are better than the others, but I'm gonna leave that up to the policy board to discuss and debate. But option A is basically to take, we need not quite $1 million, but we need about $900,000. And so one option would be to delay the final design and right-of-way phase of the Main Street project by 1 year. And we've done this in the past on this specific project. It keeps kind of getting pushed out. But that is a project that we could potentially delay by 1 year. It will likely result in that project going to construction in 2028 instead of 2027. So that anytime you got to grab $1 million from a future year to pay for something that's happening now, it has a trickle effect for every year in our funding plan. So that's one there where just those internal phases will be delayed, and again, construction will likely be pushed out a year. The other option, option B, is to request that the city cover the full increase from their capital budget, and that may require a budget amendment at the city council level to do so. But it is an option that's available. I know with McGrath Road upgrade, where we saw some really big change orders during that summer. It was like 100% increase in the project. It basically doubled from the time it was bid to when it was completed. Working with Ryan Anderson, we were able to develop a cost share where Fast Planning just paid for one change order and DOT paid for the other two using their outside funding sources. And so that was a compromise since it was a state roadway, and the state had a little bit deeper pockets to help chip into the change orders. But anyways, option B is kind of in the spirit of that, the city could use some capital funds from their budget to cover this increase. And then the last option, which is probably in my mind, probably not the most desirable, but it is a viable option. If you'll scroll down a little bit on the screen there, so Jason can see that, is that we do have some new projects that have been nominated to us in the past years. We've developed this funding plan that, we had planned to start this year next. And so there's three small projects that we could, if we delayed all of those by a year, we could come up with half the money from this year's budget and then half the money from next year's budget to accommodate that. So we would just push these out a year. So it's a somewhat of a similar option. Option C is similar to option A, but option A only affects one project and option C affects 3 projects. And then option B would affect no projects in our funding plan. So this is the best I could come up with looking at all the projects in the tip. And again, I spent a lot of time looking at it, crunching the numbers, and in my opinion, these are the only 3 viable options at this time to get this thing awarded.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fox. Do we have any questions before we go to public comment? Mayor Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, I can ask Councilman Cleaver, how would that option B affect your capital fund?
It would deplete them.
Okay. I need to know that.
It's not currently in there. I mean, there is money there. We've been diligent to put it in over the years, and one good thing about the city is we try never to get behind on it on maintenance. So we do put money in there. We already are required to make, what is the match, 20%? 5%?
9%.
9%, yeah. And that's already been budgeted.
Yes, sir. This has not been budgeted. That's what I wanted.
Mr. Cleaver, along those lines, there's some discussion here on match. Is the city able to make the match for the additional amount of increase if it was to come up with, by other sources?
I am not sure on that, and that would take time to, when is this slated to start, Bob?
So the project?
Yeah,
Yesterday.
I have answered that, actually. We don't require additional match, it's covered by the contingency. The only additional match we require from the state is $10,000. Full mortgage.
We have enough in the preventive maintenance part of the city budget to cover additional.
Oh, yeah, that,
10,000 in
yeah, that part's not a problem. I thought that you were requesting the whole thing here.
You had the 15% contingency is what you're using to fund the additional.
Other questions?
I have a question there. So option C here is probably a bigger looking at something that I've been thinking about as a more of a corridor study than a Pell, but I have been thinking about Pega Road in its entirety rather than just Pega Road and Airport Way and doing an intersection study there and what that would look like. Let's just call it a Pell for sake. So that the Pell would encompass all the way from probably Van Horn all the way to Johansson. And it would do all of this. And I don't know if I'm gonna get that done anytime soon, but $300,000 to do that study. We could save that money and the state will go and do that entire thing. It's $300,000 we can go put somewhere else. It might not need to be 300 grand that we put towards this project necessarily, but it's something to think about that it's slightly off and on topic here. But I definitely wanted to think about something there for access, north-south access. So I don't know if that would change anybody's mind here, which option we would want to pick. But that's something that the department's, it's new, hot off the presses for everybody.
And you don't have a timeline?
I don't, I gotta get, I need a new pre-construction engineer that closes on Friday and then we'll go on. So yeah. You don't want me in charge of that. You're smarter people for that.
All right, other questions before we move to public comment? All right, I'm not seeing anyone move to public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to provide testimony in the room or online?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so Eva Hall, the design manager for Fifth Avenue and for Main Street project. We needed to find, I don't remember what project, but we needed to find extra money, find one of the projects, maybe it was even this one. A few months ago, and we pushed Main Street phase 2 from FFY 23 to FFY 24. Now we're talking about pushing it from 24 to 25. And that project is on track. It's the city is working on it. It will delay. I mean, it will basically make us not do anything for about a year. And I wasn't aware that this was one of the options that we could have looked at it, but it is possible that that amount you're seeing up there could be reduced somewhat because in support of the environmental documents, what we're doing now, I believe the city has designed a pretty good portion of the utility relocation.
Storm drain, water system, sewer system, but not the underground power.
So that's another option is, but I don't have any numbers today because I wasn't able to prepare. But it's very likely that, well, it is likely that we will meet the 1.1 in FY 24, that number could be reduced. And maybe the policy board consider some kind of a hybrid. I just don't like seeing the ministry pushed again because the more we push it, it's a huge project, and every year that we delay is going to cost more.
Any questions from us all?
I have a couple questions here, probably for Ms. Hall and Jackson. What's the cost of that project construction? What is that estimate? We spent $40 million on it, if you wanted to.
Yes, it's roughly 12 million. Very close to 12.
1.5 years of the fast planning budget. Right?
Yeah, it takes up an entire year's portion plus another part of another.
So Yeah, if we gave you a couple of weeks of that, how long would it take you to, or, you know, could you come up with a number of what you think you could save? And what the reduction in the cost was, how far along the city is with it?
I'll need to work with the city. I think we could do it in less than 2 weeks, but I would like to, but I don't know if the approval for the increase for Fifth Avenue is contingent on that, then I-
So my last question then for you, Jackson, is can we approve something today so that they can award the project? Because we don't want to wait another month. That's not an option here. But is there something that we can go back and change this later on if that comes and says, yeah, I can reduce that by $600,000? And that's a massive change to what we're talking about here. And I know we gave you 2 business days to figure this out, so it's, don't feel bad or anything, but I mean, can we go back and change that at the next meeting or something like that, and change how that works?
Yeah, I mean, the goal of the action item here today is to somehow get this project awarded. We need to get that intent to award out. But I need direction on where to pull the money from. So, you know, I've heard ideas of, let's remove the airport Peg Road intersection study from Fast Plane's responsibility. DOT will fund that with a different larger project. That frees up 300,000. And then if I can grab the rest of the money from Mini Street, I mean, that combination would be a viable option, but even at that amount, it would cut that final design phase by over half. So it might be a combination of delaying the Lacey Street planning study, removing the Airport Way intersection study, and then whatever the balance is left over, take it from Mini, whatever that arbitrary number may be.
I think that's the plan from what I'm saying.
So the question for you then would be is can we just approve, let's just say everybody agrees on option A, and then next month we can come back with an actual number from the city and the department on what kind of money they actually need instead of $1 million. They need, you know, check out a number, they need 500,000, so there's $500,000 savings. And then you go and figure something, you know, figure out where we can, a fourth option, I guess, and then change again. I don't know if that's viable or not.
I think it would be, I mean, the way the motion has to be stated would be a combination of options A and C. So there would be a funding reduction to the design phase of Mini. We would delay funding for the Lacey Street planning study to a future year. And we would remove entirely from our funding plan the Airport Way Peg Road intersection study. So it'd be a combination of those 3 things that would give me enough direction to communicate to project control where to pull the money from. And I'll let you know next month where the money came from. And that's because the funds will be obligated and they will be gone.
All right, we have questions for Ms. Hall. Ms. Roden?
No, I'm wondering if just to add another layer to this. Could we basically approve all 3 options? You know, spread the money out over all 3 options.
So before we get to discussion, do you have a question for Ms. Hall? Ms.
No,
Hall's
no, sorry.
on right now, so. Okay, any further questions for Ms. Hall? All right, thank you. Do you have any other comments? Okay, and online? I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll close public comment. And the floor is open if someone wishes to make a motion. Or if we need to have a little dialogue, I think we can still have questions before we get to a motion if we need that. So, Mr. Rodeman?
Yeah, I guess now is the proper time, but yeah, I'm wondering if we should consider that, splitting it up. I mean, really that starts to get a little bit confusing, especially to make a motion, but you know, the city can chip in a little bit as well, instead of asking them for all of it. You know, we could spread the burden out. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that people, you know, I don't think we want to stop the Main Street project, you know, or delay that in any way. So I'm just proposing that maybe we go for all 3 options, however that can work out.
Mr. Cleaver?
Question, the 793, that'll be reduced by 9% because the city has to match that. Is that correct?
No, if you look at the top of this sheet that I provided, the options, you'll see the 793 is strictly a federal portion. So in addition to that, there's $78,000 in match that has to be provided. But as I understand, the 15% contingency that the city's already paid covers most or all of that. So I don't think the city has to cut any additional checks. Except for the small shortfall in the transportation alternative program dollars, which is $110,000. Yeah, that's the only check right now that the city's obligated to cut.
All right. I'm leaning towards a combination of A and C, but I would need to talk. I think the mayor needs to talk with Bob and see what engineering would like to see and where they would incur the least pain, so to speak. But the money, I don't think it'll be a problem there. We can come up with it. I guess I'm going to make a motion that for right now, we go ahead and award the lowest bid contract, funding sources being a combination of A and C. So we have more information.
Second. Moved by Mr. Cleaver, second by Mayor Welch. Discussion? Mr. Kemp?
Yeah, I don't know, this is this is a weird one, right? I don't know if it's almost like we need to, we should just pick one and then change our minds in a month when we have more information, is what it seems like to me, because we just don't know right now, right? We don't know what the potential reduced cost to Mini Street will be. Because that could, I mean, we could get it down to where, you know, the third options there is only an increase of $80,000, $100,000 in the city. Maybe it's okay. Maybe the mayor will say, yeah, we can swallow that. Okay. I don't know. You know, who knows?
Yeah.
There's probably a breaking point there for him, but it's, I don't know how we get there without just saying, okay, we'll commit it here. It's just gonna be a little bit extra legwork for Jackson to move money around with project control, I guess. I don't know how we do that without all the information.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp. We only have part of the tip here right now. When is, assuming that the ministry project stays on schedule, when does construction, are we actually anticipating construction being funded? It's not for quite some time, correct?
For which ministry?
For ministry.
2027 currently.
So it's still a year out from what we have on the screen.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I have in the notes there that if you delay that full, the amount there for the final design and right away, you're in fact going to delay the construction into a beyond year of the tip.
Mr. Olds? And I know we got some.
Yeah, and we talked about changing our mind in a month, but if I'm restating Jackson's comment earlier, is once the funds are obligated, it's sort of like we come back in a month and find out what he did. We don't have a second option to change our minds.
Was that a statement, Mr. Olds, or a question?
Yeah, I think I'm just clarifying the sort of, we've had some discussion here now on the, and I'm seeing Jackson nod his head as far as if we can come back in a month and change our minds, but I don't think that's an option. I think we have to commit to one. So kind of a statement, but also a question to Jackson if that is indeed correct.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, so here's an example, the airport Peg Road intersection study, that $300,000, if you remove that from our funding plan, and use that money for this increase, that doesn't appear anywhere else. All the rest of the years in the TIP are already, fully programmed. So we don't have any room to reinsert it. Yeah. Unless you want to put it out 5 years from now into a beyond year category. So,
All right, Mr. Rudderman?
I guess just to follow up on everything, can we? Sounds like we're all an indefinite maybe here. How do you award a contract on an indefinite maybe? I mean, I would think the contractor's gonna wanna know that we're pretty solid on this, so. I don't know how that process works, how you support a contract on maybe funding. Food for thought.
Discussions, Ms. Freeland?
Yeah, Bob, do you have any? Do you have any recommendations at this point? For the options? For preferences?
Combination of A, B, and C. That way, it does leave it open for the city to contribute some money. How much? Delaying the 3 projects, Pioneer Park, North parking lot, is that considered too, delaying that too? I didn't hear that one mentioned.
Yeah, option C is to delay 3 projects.
All 3, not just the 2, not just those 2.
The alternative that was discussed was just delaying the top 2, Lacey Street and Airport Way Pay Road intersection, in addition to taking a funding reduction on a design phase for Main Street.
And Mini Street, problem with, Mini, we would want just enough design money to identify the easements required. The right of way is a big delay, and that's the critical path really is the right of way. So we're designing just enough to identify those easements. If we can keep that going, that is the critical path on Main Street. You don't want to drop that.
But do you know what that number would be?
A lot less than the million shown in 24. We have 250 now still remaining, or 220 or something remaining.
City has 200 there, we'll spend, and DOT has 200 that we have to spend, so we'll spend some, but I can't see us spending more than 115 anyway, finished document. And then if you look at how much we need to do the designs, there's a lot of design was done pretty detailed. That is needed for document, I think that number can drop. Is there an option that the option C could be selected and then next month, because that's talking only about the delays, and then next month when I have a number from ministry, then the decision can be made on to shuffle it.
So we'll have to keep discussion of policy board members. So I appreciate the feedback and the desire to get
Well,
information
I
from
asked.
staff, but we'll have to.
I think, if I can comment, I think that's kind of what I was trying to ask Jackson, if that's a possibility to do that. If we reshuffle the step after we've got more information, we have to make a decision today, right? But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, the reason option C is complicated is because each year we get STP dollars. So if you choose option C, you're basically saying that we're gonna deprogram $450,000 in projects, and then project control will do 2023 STP dollars for $450. And then the next direction is there to borrow $450 for next year. So it'll be $450 of advanced construction funds. So you'll see 2 different obligations on the report, that they're taking $450 from this year and $450 for next year. I mean, once that's done, that's done. And then you can decide later for, like this 2023 is the conversation over. But for 2024, you can decide where that $450 comes from later for next year's funds through a amendment to our tip.
So really, the Pioneer Park one would probably be the only one that you would want to talk about on that one. That wouldn't have an impact to. Because if you dump.
Yeah,
those
you
two
take the
projects-
450 from Pioneer Park, and you take the 450 from Main Street.
Yeah.
That's the conversation that. we've
But
been
if you
having.
take the 450 from Lacey and Airport, you're not, I mean, you have to reprogram it again for.
Well, I wouldn't reprogram Airport Way if DOT is offering to pay.
No, I mean, like,
But Lacey Street, we would reprogram it probably in 2025 through a reduction to the fast improvement program.
yeah, I'm thinking that if for some reason I can't do a corridor study or a Pell or whatever I'm gonna call it there, and that has to get reprogrammed in later, I'm hoping I can get that. I'm optimistic about it, but we'll see.
But just the last thing I'll note is that we are, I believe that we're headed towards a conformity freeze by December. So once you remove a project, after when the conformity freeze is in effect, you can't add any new projects back into the plan. So in a matter of 6 months, we're gonna lose our opportunity, very likely to do the things that were described.
Yeah.
So we gotta make some hard decisions fast and realign funding plan. But yeah, I can give you options at next meeting for where the advanced construction funds in 2024, where they're actually taken from. But any funds from this year, once those are obligated, they're gone, and those projects are defunded until we consider reinserting them.
So I'll put my comments in on this one. I think the motion on the floor is to do a combination of A and C. We didn't give any specifics to what that looks like. I would speak in favor of just option A at this point. Slip Lacey by 1 year. That's how these programs are designed. We've been given information that it does slip the project potentially, but we've heard from staff that there may be funds available in the project still to continue to move it forward and maybe still be on track. That gives us time later in the summer or later in the season to be able to make additional adjustments should we need, or should we have the ability to move that back forward again. I think the other concern that I have as we start talking about bid openings, the boroughs had several in the last week here that were substantially over engineers' estimate, and we're using professional engineers and professional estimators on our projects, so they are current year dollars, and we're still getting numbers. So as we move into summer season with additional projects going out, I have concern that we have enough contingency to be able to continue to keep projects moving in general. So if there is an option for us to free up some funds through A and it creates more than we need, I don't think that puts us in a bad position. And if there is additional options under C where we can either de-obligate a project if the state's willing to pick it up or whatever, I have a feeling that we're going to need those additional funds going into this year, just by the way that the season's shaping up. So I don't think it puts us in a bad position to continue to move projects forward. And we're talking about a project that's not expected to go to construction until 27, 28, as it is now. So there's years of time in there for us to make adjustments versus messing up the entire current fiscal year and next fiscal year or tip. So, and again, I think Mr. Fox put this in a really very succinct fashion that with option C, you can't kick anything out because there's nothing else to kick. So it has to get reprogrammed. And that puts us back out into these construction years that we're looking at for Mini. So Mini Street is definitely one that needs to get done, but I don't think this puts us in a difficult spot. And what I've heard from staff is that they have funds that they will continue to keep moving forward on. And I think we have flexibility and time to make adjustments later on in the season if we need to. So I would speak in favor of option A only. Mayor Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for my clarification, did you state under option A, or maybe I misunderstood you, that we would be delaying Lacey Street? Did you mean Mini Street?
If I meant to say Lacey, I meant Mini.
There you go. I'm on board. Thank you.
Thanks for the correction. Further discussion debate. The motion on the floor is for option A and C. Mr. Fox, do we have enough direction with the motion as it's stated for you to do something?
No,
Okay,
it's
so
not, it's not specific enough if you're combining A and C. Because C has 3 components.
so we'll need an option to correct the motion. at some point. Mr. Rhythm?
So just a question, so are you recommending that we don't combine any of these? We need to pick one.
No, you can combine, but the motion needs some specificity as to, here's an example. The motion was to adopt A and C. So of C, we would be delaying Lacey Street out years. We would be removing funding for the Airport Peg Road intersection study. And then the balance of funds needed will come out of option A to reduce the design phase for Mini Street. And that's the specificity I need as far as what to tell project control as far as spend this much 2023 STP dollars and this much 2024 STP dollars.
Mr. Cleaver?
I would somewhat disagree with that. We don't know what we heard here from the engineers. we don't know how much of that $1 million we can reduce easily. If it's 500,000 or something, that's a big chunk of this right now. If we go to option C, it might be just one of those projects. I don't know which one, but I think we need to leave the door open to get some information. Yes, let's award this bid. We know we have mechanisms we can fund it. We know that. We can move Main Street out or whatever we're gonna decide to do, but I guess I'm puzzled as to why we need to tell you immediately that this is the one we have. We just got this an hour ago. And we didn't see this at the pre-meeting, so I can't talk to city at the time. We just need a little bit more time, but we've got a mechanism to do it. Have to make a hard decision is right, but I don't want to delay that bid award. Let's go ahead and do that. And I think we need to keep the motion on the floor here because I think that's what it's going to come down to. We just can't give you the numbers because I don't have numbers here to give you.
So if I can, I think it's correct to say that we have funding in the TIP, but our TIP is fiscally constrained. And so we have to be specific as to where those funds are coming from. And that's why it is such a difficult decision, because you're talking about slipping projects. But that's a requirement for us to maintain our constrained TIP, is that we have to be specific as to where those funds come from. So the issue that I think Mr. Fox and DOT are dealing with is they cannot award a bid unless they know where those dollars are coming from. And what that means is they have to say which project we're taking the dollars from in order to make this award. And I understand it's frustrating and we don't want to slip projects, but that's the reality of the decision that we have before us, is that there are only so many dollars in the fund, only so many dollars in the pot, and we don't have enough contingency funds for lapsing projects to be able to make an easy decision like we have in the past. And even the decision that we're in now, we're talking about using advanced construct for a number of our projects. So it's slipping multiple projects as a part of that. But that's how these systems are designed, is for us to make those decisions and then be very clear and transparent as to where those dollars are coming from. So I would support staff and the recommendation that we make a clear statement as to where the dollars are coming from. Because I believe that's required. Mr. Roder?
So then can I take a stab at making a new motion here?
It'd be an amendment to the motion.
Or an amendment to the motion, and see if I understand where we're going with this. So I would amend the motion to take the funds from all of option A and the Pioneer Park North Parking Lot boat launch of option C. Is that specific enough? Is that what you were looking for?
So 450 from here and the remainder from A.
Yes.
But you want to pick the parking lot and boat launch as opposed to the other two above it.
Correct. Is that specific enough? Did I understand what you were trying to get to? Not that I get that.
Ryan.
Yeah, that's specific enough. So it would be split between Main Street and Pioneer Park. So Pioneer Park, the design would be delayed a year, and we would reinsert that 450K by reducing the fast improvement program by that amount. So we cut a $1.1 million project down to 550,000. So there's always a trickle effect for the future year, as Pioneer Park is a whole project. This is that 450 is just a design phase. But yeah, your motion is specific enough for me to move forward with that. I just wanted to make you understand how the funding plan would be changed. Pioneer Park would be moved out, the design start would be moved out 1 year, which the future phases of that, the construction all slide out 1 year.
I'm gonna second it.
So moved by Mr. Rodeman. It sounds like folks are clear on the motion, seconded by Mr. Cleaver. Discussion. Mr. Rodeman?
Sounds like I hit a nerve with Mr. Fox, so feel free to vote this down. I thought I was helping out, but we'll see.
Mr. Cleaver?
The reality is is we can go back. You'll have a funding source, and that's what you want. But we can go back and make changes later on too in the next 30 days. Isn't that reality too?
Yes, provided, see, if you do option A and C in the combination that was described, I would be telling project control to use 100% advanced construction funds from 2024 to pay for this. And so, and then I will be bringing you back the TIP amendment to show you that I pulled it from Mini Street and delayed Pioneer Park.
Again, we can change that at a later date too. I mean, my puzzlement is I want to see how much of that $1 million we can actually get out of it. I mean, I want to see that number. We don't have that information now. I think we will in 30 days from what I heard of the testimonies.
Discussion debate. So I'm a little frustrated with the amendment. I guess my frustration is we're talking about delaying Mini Street. And now we're talking about partially just delaying, taking that portion out of another project, which delays it by another year for construction. So, again, I'm not saying that it's a tit for tat type of thing, but, you've got Fifth Avenue, which is a city street, you've got Mini Street, which is a city street. I think keeping the project funds constrained to those two projects, I think is appropriate. I guess in the end, our tip can be moved. So if it's the intention to slip a Pioneer Park project by a year versus the Mini Street one, I guess it's the will of the board. But I think you have a very clear option with option A to completely fund this out of the Mini Street upgrades. And if it comes back that we have additional funds to put back to it, you can put them back to Mini Street. And you don't touch any other projects in TIP. So to me, that seems like the most logical explanation and logical way to deal with this. But that's the mayor of the borough talking about a borough project, and we've got the city talking about a city project. So I understand that there's differences of opinions on those different types of projects, but one way or another, we've got an option that works that's on the table. So I think for the very short, immediate need, you can move something forward. I'm not super happy with the amendment, but it works. So this room.
And again, just to make sure that I'm clear and everybody's clear, regardless of what we vote on here today, we do have an option of changing it in the future. Is that correct? Sort of.
Yes.
Only if we're, again, borrowing this money for next year. Then I can come back with some alternatives, but if you're taking money from this current year, deprogramming some projects that have funding dedicated to them, that option is lost. So, but yeah, I mean, whether you pick option A or this combination of A and C where you're just touching Pioneer Park, we're talking about funds in 2024. So the direction for me is to tell project control, reduce our funding amount for next year by $800,000. So, and then we can take a look at which projects that money's actually going to come from later. But I do need to, I mean, the TIP is a plan that we put out for comment. It's been accepted. It's been turned into federal highways. And if I say I'm going to borrow money for 2024, I do need to tell people where that money's coming from, that what expense to which other projects, so that they know if future TIP amendments coming, what those changes being made. It's not we're just put money on a credit card without any idea how to pay it off.
Mini Street has been going on for how many years? When did that project first come on the docket? But I don't want it to become another Yankovich Road, which has been going on as long as I think when did you and I get on, Mayor, back in the long time? Isn't Yankovich been around that whole time? So, and I don't want Mini Street to become that. And it is slowly becoming that. And we keep pushing it back and back because of the price tag and that darn thing. But so I'm sympathetic to what we heard in public comments here, and that's why I'm leaning that way. But again, things can change in the next 30 days too. But let's get this bid award. That's the main thing. And I think we can revisit this. I don't think you may lose what you want. We'll see.
All right, any further discussion on the amendment to the motion? The amendment will not carry the main motion, so no further discussion. Mr. Fox, can you call the roll?
Mr. Rutherford,
Yes.
Mr. Hayward,
Yes.
Mayor Ward,
No.
Mr. Kemp,
No.
Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Olds,
Oh,
3-3. So the motion fails. Or the amendment fails, so we're back to the motion as not amended,
Which was?
which was for option A and option C. Discussion, debate, amendments.
Call for the question.
Question's been called. Is there objection? Okay, there's no objection. Mr. Fox, please call the roll.
Mayor Ward,
No.
Mr. Kemp,
No.
Mayor Welch,
No.
Mr. Rutherford,
No.
Mr. Hayward,
Why not? Yes.
Mr. Olds,
no.
5-1. Vote the questions, call the question's been failed, so we're back to the motion before us.
What
Make a
motion?
motion.
What motion?
Yeah, there is no vote up.
No, the question, you called the question, so we voted on calling the question.
The motion is to have A and C. That's done.
I think we're done. Now we need a new motion, right?
No, so the motion on the floor was to approve A and C. Mr. Cleaver called the question. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Because I asked for objection and there was no objection, so
It's war in here.
it is one of those.
Yeah, sorry to turn my hand off.
No, everyone's getting ready.
Okay,
All that
so
for
we do have to have an action here, so we're back to the action item. Thanks, like.
Chair, I'll make a motion for option A. To move this on.
So moved by Mr. Kemp,
Second.
second by Mr. Roden. Discussion? Mr. Roden?
I think based on everything we've gone through here, I think this is gonna be our best option. And again, it sounds like, like Mr. Cleaver said, we'll change this once we've got some more information. So if we need to, I think that's the only thing we're gonna get past here.
Further discussion, debate? Not seeing any. Mr. Fox, please call the roll.
Mr. Kemp,
Yes.
Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Mr. Rutherford,
Yes.
Mr. Cleaver,
Yes.
Mayor Ward,
Yes,
Mr. Olds,
Yes.
it's been approved. That brings us to other issues. We have no other issues, informational items. Item A, charging and fueling infrastructure grant opportunities for DOT and ADA. Mr. Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Ward. So on page 35, just want to make you all aware of two different grant opportunities that are out on the street. The first one is through the Alaska Energy Authority. They have issued a request for applications for fast charging stations along the state's alternative fuel corridor, the Parks Highway between Anchorage and Fairbanks. This is for the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Fund that are given to the state of Alaska. And this phase one here, the state is charged with building fast charging stations every 50 miles along the Parks Highway. So this is opportunity for site hosts along the Parks Highway to apply for those funds. There is a 20% match that's required. And this corridor begins on the north side of Anchorage and the south side of Fairbanks. There's not, I don't think that there's necessarily any interest from our local governments in pursuing this, but it is out there on the street, and I'll report back to you once I hear from the Alaska Energy Authority as to whether or not they got enough applications to complete that network. But that alternative fuel corridor does need to be fully built out. before the remainder of those funds that are allocated to the state can be spent. The estimate is 10 to 14 million for the full build out of the corridor. And then there'll be over $30 million left over for use statewide. But this corridor is being built out first before that 30+ million remainder is eligible to be used anywhere else in the state. So this is a critical phase of use of this funding. And then next on page 36, as I mentioned during my staff report and during our first action item, there is an open US DOT grant opportunity for charging and fueling infrastructure. This also requires a 20% match. But I think that our community could be competitive for this grant opportunity with our bundle of EV electric vehicle charging stations, since it's supported by multiple local governments, and they will be placed in locations where they will be accessible to the public on public property at public facilities. And the fact that we are in a 225 non-attendant area and have air quality issues here locally. So, and again, the Alaska Energy Authority is interested in partnering on an application with us, and their role is what they're interested in is workforce development, training programs for local unions, and general public outreach to communities throughout the state on EV charging stations and EV vehicles in general. So, and that concludes my report on that information item.
Any questions for Mr. Fox? Mr. Fox, the borough is actually looking at this particular program. One of the components is allowable for natural gas.
Yes.
Is that something that you looked into or had conversation?
So I'm in discussions with UAF since they nominated to us a compressed natural gas fueling station and bus fleet conversion. What I'm trying to find out from UAF is that if we added those components to our application and made it more dynamic, if the university could in fact come up with a 20% match required, which may be difficult for the university.
Thank you. Further questions? I'm not seeing any. On to the next item, which is obligations and offsets.
Yeah, beginning on page 46, obligations are up now to 47% because Fifth Avenue reconstruction went out to bid. The next project to go out to bid this month is our fast improvement program. So that's our other construction project here this summer, and that should go out to bid here shortly. But the obligation report on pages 46 and 47 has been completely updated to match our new 2023 to 2027 TIP. So these are all the actual programming and obligations for this current federal fiscal year. On page 48 is our current offsets. I believe I reported this to you during our last meeting, but we are slightly overspent on our offsets for the year. And I don't have any expectation for project control that we're going to receive any new offsets anytime soon, but I check with them on a monthly basis. Page 49 is our current project closures list. Here's my report.
Any questions, Mr. Fox? So Jackson, if I'm looking at the obligations report, we've got fast improvement program. We're expecting that to go out here the next month or so, you said?
This month.
This month. If what do we see, 20% on Fifth Avenue? 24%. If we're looking at these numbers and we expect to see another 24%, that would be another couple $100,000. Is that correct? I guess my common request is, as you work on your fiscal plan, you take that into consideration for bid opening on the fast improvement program.
Yeah, one, I guess, response to that is by selecting option A and delaying those phases, we're freeing up a few $100,000 more than what we need for that one. So I would just leave that hole there for bids if they come back in the fast improvement program. I think we're sufficiently covered, but we don't know until the bids come in. Right, we just don't know.
All right, further questions from Mr. Fox? All right, I'm not seeing any. Goes to policy board member comments. We'll start with Mr. Olds online. Mr. Olds, do you have anything for us today? Mr. Bergman? Mayor Walsh?
Yes, thank you. Well, today I think it's April 19th. I think of a few things here. 1775 shot heard around the world, Lexington and Concord. Then I think of 1995, Arthur P. Murrow building on that same day, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, and how they got caught because they didn't have a license plate on their car while they're flying on I-35 towards Kansas to escape. But it made me think about yesterday when I left with Chief Dutra. I was his ride along. We're heading back to North Pole from the Westmark from the Family Friendly Workplace nominations. Happy to see the Jackson Box here was awarded for his family friendly work environment here for his size of his group here. But as we were going back, somebody came flying out on the highway from off of the Mitchell. And she didn't know, here we are unmarked, but we're tracking. And to keep up, we had to do 87 miles per hour. And thank God that our state DOT up here has been keeping the roads maintained. I'm sure they weren't meant to drive 87 miles per hour. Of course, you couldn't outrun the radio in our little Kia Soul. But so they have the chief of police and the with his body cam and the mayor to sit there as witnesses, and we had her intercepted as she came into the city of North Pole, so exceeding basic speed. So I think about all the things that we try to do to keep our roads safe and all the collaborative efforts that we go through. So keep that in mind as we go towards trying to get to a real spring conclusion here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kemp.
No, that's enough for me.
Mr. Cleaver.
At 87, they're just trying to get to North Pole quicker. They like their community. I have none from there.
Okay, I'll just echo Mayor Walsh's comments on family friendly workplace board. So congratulations, Jackson. Very nice things said about the office and your staff. Happy for that award yesterday. And I'm glad we got the air back on. We were talking earlier. I'm thinking, geez, this is a big deal, but it's not this big. a deal. I feel like I got to change it. Anyway, I'll end it at that, and appreciate all of it today. And that adjourns our meeting.